Chapter 205 Watching the Battle. After giving orders to all of the disciples, the young woman turned around and looked at the swamp in front of her, using a faint voice to murmur to herself, "It seems like that object should be inside of this chest. The previous few locations were all a waste, all I got was some trash." The young woman's voice was inaudible. Apart from herself, the other disciples could not hear anything at all. They were all extremely excited for the imminent, upcoming big battle. After the young woman's orders had been passed down, the male and female disciples from the Masked Moon sect immediately stood side by side with their Tao companions. They actually both reached out a hand very skillfully and held them together. Suddenly, the two overlapping hands individually emitted a blue and red strange brilliance, then, following down their arms, it spread to these disciples' entire bodies, causing the 6 pairs of Masked Moon sect disciples to be covered with light, red light shrouding the males' bodies, blue light shooting off of the females, forming a strange blue-red crisscross shape. Only 3 disciples remained, 1 male and 2 female, having already lost their Tao companions. They could only bring out some magic tools, merely making some basic preparations. Han Li lay on the mound of dirt. Although he had not heard the young woman murmuring to herself, he had exactly heard the female disciple in front call her martial ancestor. This instantly caused him to almost bite his tongue and injure it in a moment of surprise. Martial ancestor of the Masked Moon sect, what was this notion? Han Li was already no longer a rookie in the cultivation world, and he was very clear about this situation. That was a core formation cultivator expert who was of the same level as his sect's martial ancestor Li. That this kind of an expert would actually appear in the forbidden area, which was restricted from cultivators of the foundation establishment stage and above, caused Han Li's head to whirl. At this time, seeing that all of her sect's disciples were properly prepared, the young woman began to take action contentedly. The young woman faintly opened her dainty mouth and spat out her magic treasure, the vermilion bird band. When this item came out from her mouth, it immediately whirled through the air as it traveled above the swamp and expanded to the same size as a small building. Next, the young woman beneath it formed hand incantations for a magic technique and pointed with her finger. A streak of red light shot from her hand to the ring. In an instant, the band's color rapidly changed from pink to a fiery, blazing red. On top of the dirt mound, Han Li was stunned by what he saw. This kind of impact and strength, if one said that this wasn't a magic treasure, one could beat him to death and he wouldn't believe it. Since the young woman could control this magic treasure, her identity as a core formation cultivator was undoubtable. But how was she able to make her way into the forbidden area, and why was her magic power only at the peak of the Qi condensation stage? These string of questions flew around in Han Li's head, but he still had no way of answering them. The young woman had yet to take the next step when the swamp below began to show signs of movement. With a certain part of the swamp as the center, the nearby silt began to roil. In addition, the roiling area became greater and greater, and the waves higher and higher. It actually slowly formed into a huge protrusion, the sight of which was extremely shocking. A trace of doubt flitted across the young woman's face when she saw this. Based on her memories, the black scale python had never seemed to be this imposing. However, seeing that the demonic beast's appearance was imminent, the young woman did not dare to hesitate. Her 2 hands formed hand incantations for the blue flower magic technique, with her attention connected to the huge vermilion bird band, which began to spin in the air. In a short amount of time, it became blurry because of how fast it was spinning. The hundreds of fireballs inside of it also became a red sea of fire in the time it takes to roll one's eyes, actually dissolving into one entity. Go! The young woman spit out as her magic technique suddenly stabilized. All of a sudden, the round ring spinning stopped abruptly, and the encapsulated sea of flames thus suddenly became a thick, large fire cyclone pillar that aggressively shot out downwards, directly spurting towards the huge protrusion from the swamp. However, before the flame column had neared the swamp, a column of black, inky water as thick as a bowl's opening shot out of the silt protrusion with a poochie, just in time to block the flames shooting towards it. Suddenly, the explosions filled the air, and a large ball of mist immediately rose up in pieces, causing the surroundings to be steaming with fog in the blink of an eye. Everything became blurry. This isn't the black scale python. The young woman's originally somewhat doubtful expression, upon seeing the column of water that was as dark as ink, immediately changed as she spoke. As if replying to the young woman's words, the sound of a wail came from the vast white fog. An extremely strange, piercing scream began to sound and pierce towards the sky. Then, with a hula, an extremely hot gust of wind began to blow, causing the surrounding white air to disappear with a roll, revealing the true colors of the demonic beast. A black, swarthy, snake-shaped demon covered with huge scales appeared before everyone's eyes. This seemingly snake-like yet not a snake demonic beast's bulk was not actually too big, only 30 to 40 meters long. However, its entire body, from head to toe, was shrouded by a layer of faint black fog, appearing extremely demonic. In addition, its external appearance from head to tail was not much different from that of a regular black python. Of course, its black and shiny hug scales were an exception. Inky Flood Dragon. The young woman, upon clearly seeing the demonic beast's appearance, couldn't help but cry out. Her face revealed an apprehensive yet excited expression. However, the 10 or so disciples standing behind her were somewhat puzzled. Wasn't this the black scaly python? Since when did it become some inky flood dragon? The young woman couldn't afford to explain clearly to all the disciples because the demonic beast floating numerous meters above the ground had already found the main culprit and disturbing its rest. The two small, green eyes on the side of its head flashed malevolently. It opened its mouth, and another black column of water leaped towards the people from the masked moon sect. Beast. You're looking to die. The young woman knew very well the strength of the inky flood dragon. Although this demonic beast seemed as if it was young, she did not dare to be careless at all. She hurriedly controlled the vermilion bird band, instantly releasing a red ring of light that suddenly flashed and blocked in front of the young woman. Then, a string of fireballs came flying out from within the ring, causing that black water to be stopped halfway to its destination. Receive, speed, restrain, arrest, lock. The young woman's two hands formed a half contained a full moon as she awe-inspiringly spit out these 5 words from her mouth. When these 5 words had just left her mouth, the vermilion bird band began to jitter rapidly in midair. Then, it began to emit a low ring, and disappeared into thin air. This caused the spiritually wise inky flood dragon to blink its small eyes, staring blankly because of it. But the next instant, the ring actually directly appeared on the demonic beast's forehead while humming. It took advantage of the demonic beast's slowness to react and instantly sank down, then rapidly became much smaller. In the blink of an eye, the vermilion bird band actually abruptly wrapped around the inky flood dragon's midsection, and then a fiery light rose up rapidly on the ring. Instantly, half of the demonic beast's body was enveloped in the fierce flames. Move quickly. I can't contain this inky flood dragon for too long. Although the vermilion bird band had securely wrapped the demonic beast, the young woman didn't have any relaxing expression. Instead, she sent out commands behind her with anxiety. Although the masked moon sect disciples behind her did not know how the black scaly python had suddenly become the inky flood dragon that their martial ancestor informed them about, this did not prevent them from releasing the offensive that they had prepared a long time ago. Attack. Under the orders of a relatively elderly, white-clothed female, 10 columns of red and blue intersecting light were released from these male and female disciples' bodies, emitting an appalling chi-chi sound that tore through the air. They unmistakably attacked the immobile demonic beast. A series of loud hong-hong sounds spread out. When these columns had just reached near the demonic beast's body, they were forcibly blocked by the faint black fog that shrouded its body. Fierce bursting sounds rang out. Continue to attack. The inky flood dragon's protective fog can't hold on much longer. The young woman commanded hastily, her eyes sharp. At the same time, she continued to push the red flaming technique on the vermilion bird band, causing the flames surrounding the demonic beast to become even more vigorous. Under the string of commands from the young woman, the masked moon sect disciples incessantly shot out individual columns of red and blue light, hitting the demonic beast's body. Although they had yet to break through that layer of black fog, they had already caused the demonic beast to howl and go crazy. It bared its teeth and viciously shook the two halves of its body that were able to move, furiously trying to break free from the ring's grasp. However, its struggle was futile. Under the young woman's all-out efforts to restrict it, the round ring was fixed in midair, not moving even a little, thoroughly locking down its body. Watching from the side, Han Li was struck with fright. He had never seen the spectacle of a group of cultivators this large battling a common enemy. Even more, the appearance of the magic treasure and fact that the opponent was a demonic beast that wasn't weak was a big eye-opener for him. However, Han Li also decided that whether the demonic beast beat its enemies or the masked moon sect people killed the demonic beast, he would quietly sneak away after the big battle. This was not the time to casually expose his own tracks. Woo! Just as Han Li was entertaining all sorts of ideas in his head, the inky flood dragon suddenly let out a long cry, its sound numerous times louder than before. At the same time, its scream was filled with pain. Han Li was startled and immediately fixed his gaze there. He saw that the black fog on the demonic beast had already completely dissipated, and a bowl-opening wide bloody hole had appeared on the area of its body covered by the huge scales. Evidently, it had been hurt by the red and blue columns of light. The agony also caused the demonic beast struggling to become even more crazy. It seems that the people from the masked moon sect are of a higher skill level. Han Li couldn't help but think after seeing this. Not good. Everyone, be careful. I can't contain this inky flood dragon any longer. Han Li was stunned when he heard the young woman. It was difficult to tell who the winner would be.